Welcome to the Menga podcast, your ultimate dose of vulnerability. All right, so this month's Patch Tuesday is a wild one, isn't it?
It certainly is. A lot to unpack.
I think people who listen to this show probably already know that Microsoft releases these security updates every month.
Right.
But this time they had to fix a whopping 118 flaws.
Yeah, big one this month.
Imagine trying to patch 118 holes in a leaky boat, you know?
I can imagine. That's a pretty good analogy, actually.
That's kind of the scale we're talking about.
Yeah. And to make things even more intense, 5 of these vulnerabilities were 0 days.
Okay, now I know that people listening to our show probably know what a 0 day is. But for anyone who's new,
Yeah.
can you explain what makes them so scary?
Sure. What makes 0 days particularly scary is that attackers are already exploiting them out in the wild before even Microsoft has a chance to release a fix.
So it's like, okay, someone's figured out how to pick the lock in your front door, and they're already rummaging through your stuff before you even realize it.
Exactly. It's a race against time, and this month the attackers had a head start. 2 of those 0 days were already being actively exploited.
Yikes. That definitely raises the stakes. So which vulnerabilities should we be most worried about?
Well, one that immediately jumps out involves MS-HTML, which is a core component behind many Windows applications and even some web browsers. This particular flaw allows for spoofing, which essentially means tricking you into thinking a file is something it's not. Think of it like those phishing emails that look like they're from your bank, but are actually designed to steal your login credentials.
Those phishing scams are the worst. But this is even sneakier, right? Because it's exploiting something built into Windows itself.
Right. And what makes this vulnerability even more concerning is that it's similar to a flaw exploited earlier this year by a group called Void Banshee.
Void Banshee, that sounds scary.
Yeah, it is. These are some seriously skilled attackers known for targeting high-profile individuals and organizations. The fact that they were able to pull off a similar attack before suggests that they're constantly upping their game and finding new ways to bypass security measures.
It's like they're professional cat burglars, always finding new ways to outsmart the security system. Speaking of sophisticated attacks, another vulnerability that caught my eye is in the Microsoft Management Console, or MMC for short.
That's a significant one. This flaw could allow attackers to execute code remotely on your computer, essentially taking control of it from afar.
Remote code execution. That sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi thriller. How would someone even exploit this?
Think of those emails with attachments that look like harmless documents. But when you open them, hidden code executes, giving the attacker a backdoor into your system. That's how this MMC flaw could be exploited.
So just opening an email could give someone control of your computer. That's terrifying. But hold on, with 118 vulnerabilities, are they all this dangerous?
That's a great question, and it's important to remember that not all vulnerabilities are created equal. Some are like cracks in the sidewalk, annoying but not life-threatening. Others are more like sinkholes, you want to avoid them at all costs. In this Patch Tuesday batch, we've got 5 0 days and 3 critical vulnerabilities that should be at the top of your patching list.
Okay, so it's about prioritizing, focusing on the most dangerous threats first. Can you tell us more about those critical vulnerabilities?
Absolutely. One of them affects Microsoft Configuration Manager, a tool used by IT departments to manage software updates and installations across their networks. This vulnerability has a CVSS score of 9.8, which basically means it's a code red situation. Exploiting it could allow attackers to run their own code on affected systems. Imagine someone sneaking malicious software into your software update.
Oh, wow. That's like getting food poisoning from a restaurant you thought was totally safe. So patching this one quickly is mission critical. What about the other two?
Another critical vulnerability involved a Visual Studio Code extension for Arduino, a platform used by hobbyists and professionals to build electronics projects. It was serious enough to earn a CVSS score of 8.8. Thankfully, Microsoft acted swiftly and removed the vulnerable extension from their marketplace, encouraging users to switch to the official Arduino software.
Okay, so that one's been contained, which is a relief. What about the third critical vulnerability?
This one affects Remote Desktop Protocol Server, which is often used to access computers remotely. It has a CVSS score of 8.1, and exploiting it could give attackers control over your system by sending specially crafted requests. Imagine someone hijacking your remote session and taking over your computer. That's the kind of damage we're talking about here.
Okay, now it's officially feeling like a hacker convention in my nightmares. I'm sensing a theme here. A lot of these critical vulnerabilities seem to revolve around remote code execution. Is that a major concern right now?
You're absolutely right to pick up on that. Remote code execution is like the holy grail for attackers because it gives them direct control over a target system. The fact that several of this month's zero-day vulnerabilities also involve remote code execution really underscores how serious this issue is.
So patching quickly is crucial. But with 118 vulnerabilities in total, it can feel overwhelming to know where to even begin.
You're not wrong. It can feel like a game of whack-a-mole, but don't worry, there's a method to the madness. Microsoft actually provides detailed information about each vulnerability, including how severe it is, what it impacts, and suggestions for fixing it. They also have a summary of the most critical ones that should be addressed ASE.
So it's not just about patching everything blindly. It's about understanding the risks and prioritizing.
Exactly. It's about being strategic. And remember, patching is just one layer of protection. Think of it like a good security system for your house. You wouldn't just rely on strong locks. You'd also have an alarm system, motion sensors, maybe even a guard dog. In the digital world, this translates to things like strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and regular security awareness training.
Okay, so patching is important, but it's part of a bigger security strategy. Got it. Are there any other vulnerabilities lurking in this Patch Tuesday report that you found particularly interesting or unusual?
Well, one that caught my eye was a security feature bypass vulnerability in Windows Hyper-V, a technology that lets you run multiple operating systems on a single physical machine.
Hyper-V. That sounds pretty technical. What could someone do with that?
Imagine you have a bunch of sensitive documents locked away in a secure vault. This vulnerability is like finding a secret passage that bypasses all those locks and lets you right into the vault. An attacker could use it to break out of a secure virtual machine and access the main system or other virtual machines running on it.
So it's like one infected computer could spread to others, kind of like a digital virus.
Exactly. That's why patching this one is so important, especially if you're in an organization that uses virtualization a lot. Luckily, Microsoft has released a patch, so updating your systems should take care of the risk.
So another reminder to stay vigilant and keep those systems up to date. What else caught your attention?
There were a bunch of elevation of privilege vulnerabilities patched this month. These are concerning because they could let someone gain a higher level of access to a system than they're supposed to have. Think of it like an intern suddenly gaining access to the CEO's computer and all the company secrets.
Yikes. So they could potentially access sensitive data, install malware, or even take control of critical systems.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to address these types of vulnerabilities quickly. It's like reinforcing the locks on your doors and windows to keep intruders out. Solid advice. Okay, so we've covered quite a few specific vulnerabilities, but I'm curious to get your take on the bigger picture. What are some key takeaways we can glean from this Patch Tuesday? It seems like a lot to process.
You're right, it is a lot. But the biggest takeaway is that staying on top of your patches is absolutely critical. Think of it like brushing your teeth, a regular habit that helps prevent bigger problems down the line. And remember, patching isn't just about applying the latest updates from Microsoft. It's also about addressing vulnerabilities in any other software you use, like Adobe products or those random apps you downloaded.
Makes sense. So it's a holistic approach, not just a Microsoft-centric one.
Exactly. It's about taking a comprehensive look at your digital hygiene and recognizing that weak points can exist in any software you use. And remember, attackers are always looking for new ways to exploit vulnerabilities, so staying informed about the latest threats and best practices is essential.
It's like a constant game of cat and mouse, right? We're always trying to stay one step ahead of the bad guys. You got it. It's a never-ending chess match, and both sides are constantly evolving their strategies.
So with all these vulnerabilities flying around, what are some of your top recommendations for listeners based on this month's Patch Tuesday? It can be overwhelming to know where to even start.
First and foremost, prioritize patching those actively exploited 0 days we talked about earlier. Those are the most urgent threats. After that, focus on the critical vulnerabilities, especially the ones affecting Microsoft Configuration Manager, Visual Studio Code, and Remote Desktop Protocol Server.
Okay, so focus on the high-impact vulnerabilities first. What else?
Don't stop there. Take a look at the full list of vulnerabilities and decide which ones to prioritize based on how severe they are and how they could potentially impact your specific systems and setup. For example, if you don't use Hyper-V, then patching that vulnerability might not be as high on your list as someone who relies on it heavily.
It's like a doctor giving different advice to different patients based on their specific health conditions.
Exactly. It's about understanding your own unique digital risk profile and creating a patching strategy that makes sense for you. And don't be afraid to ask for help if you're feeling overwhelmed. There are tons of resources out there, from Microsoft's own documentation to cybersecurity blogs and forums where you can get expert advice and support. You don't have to go it alone.
Okay, so prioritize based on your individual needs and don't be afraid to reach out for help. Great advice.
Now that we've covered some of the specific vulnerabilities, let's switch gears and explore the broader trends and implications of this Patch Tuesday. There's a lot more to unpack here.
Sounds good. I'm ready for round 2 of this deep dive.
All right.
We've explored some of the individual vulnerabilities in this month's Patch Tuesday, but now I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the bigger picture. What trends are you seeing in this report, and what do they tell us about, the current state of cybersecurity?
Well, one thing that really stands out to me is the sheer volume of vulnerabilities being discovered and patched every month. 118 this time around, that's a lot of potential entry points for attackers. It's like trying to keep a giant inflatable castle from deflating. You're constantly patching holes as new ones pop up.
It feels like the attack surface is constantly expanding, with more code, more features, and therefore more opportunities for vulnerabilities to sneak in.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And to complicate matters, further attackers are becoming increasingly sophisticated. We're seeing more zero-day exploits, more advanced techniques and attacks that are specifically tailored to target certain individuals or organizations.
So it's a constant arms race, with attackers always trying to outsmart the defenders. And with technology evolving so rapidly, it seems like the attackers might have the upper hand. What do you think?
Not necessarily. While it's true that attackers are constantly innovating, so are the defenders.
Okay.
We're seeing more advanced security tools and technologies being developed, better collaboration and information sharing among security professionals, and a growing awareness of the importance of cybersecurity at all levels of organizations.
That's reassuring. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Definitely not. It's a dynamic field full of challenges and opportunities.
Okay, so it's a mixed bag. What are some key takeaways from this month's Patch Tuesday that highlight those challenges and opportunities?
Well, on the challenge side, the fact that we had 2 0 days being actively exploited before Microsoft could even issue patches underscores the urgency of patching quickly. Think of it like a race. The longer you wait to apply those patches, the bigger the head start you're giving the attackers.
It's a stark reminder that vulnerabilities aren't just theoretical threats, they're being actively exploited in the wild right now.
Exactly. Another challenge is the growing complexity of software and the sheer volume of vulnerabilities being discovered. It's becoming increasingly difficult for organizations to keep up with patching and to ensure their systems are truly secure.
It's like trying to manage a garden that keeps growing new weeds faster than you can pull them. How do you even keep up?
It requires a well-defined strategy. Organizations need to have a robust patch management process in place and prioritize patching based on the level of risk each vulnerability poses.
Okay, so patching quickly and prioritizing based on risk. Got it. Now, let's talk opportunities. What are some of those positive developments you mentioned?
One of the most exciting developments is the increasing use of artificial intelligence, or AI, in cybersecurity. AI-powered tools can help automate tasks like threat detection and response, making it easier for organizations to stay one step ahead.
So it's like having a digital security guard that never sleeps and can analyze data much faster than a human could.
Exactly. AI can be a real game changer, helping organizations be more proactive and efficient in their security efforts. Another promising trend is the growing collaboration and information sharing among security professionals. Organizations are realizing that they can't fight this battle alone and are working together to share threat intelligence and best practices.
It's like the old saying, two heads are better than one, right? By working together, security teams can learn from each other's experiences and be better prepared to face emerging threats.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility and that we all benefit from a more secure digital environment.
We've talked a lot about the sheer volume of vulnerabilities and the increasing complexity of software as a major factor in this. It seems like that complexity itself is a security risk.
You're absolutely right. As software becomes more complex, it becomes more difficult to identify and fix all potential security flaws. It's like a house of cards. The more cards you add, the more unstable the structure becomes.
And software is so essential to our modern world, we can't just stop using it. How can we address this complexity problem?
Well, one approach is to focus on building more secure software from the ground up. This means using secure coding practices, performing rigorous security testing, and incorporating security considerations into the entire software development lifecycle.
So rather than trying to fix vulnerabilities after the software is already built, we need to be thinking about security from the very beginning.
Exactly. It's about shifting security left, making it an integral part of the development process, not an afterthought. This requires a cultural shift within organizations where developers are educated about security risks and best practices, and security is prioritized at every stage.
So it's not just about technical solutions. It's about changing the mindset of how software is built.
Absolutely. But even with the best intentions, no software is perfect, and vulnerabilities will inevitably be found. That's why it's so important to have a layered security approach that includes measures like patching, intrusion detection systems, and robust incident response plans.
It's like having multiple layers of security for your home. Strong locks and alarm system, and maybe even a guard dog. Even if one layer is compromised, the others can still protect you.
That's a great analogy. It's about acknowledging that there's no single silver bullet when it comes to cybersecurity. Instead, it's about implementing a combination of measures to mitigate risk and make it as difficult as possible for attackers to succeed.
And with attackers becoming more sophisticated, that layered approach seems more important than ever.
Absolutely. It's about being prepared for the inevitable and having a plan in place to respond effectively when security incidents occur.
We've been talking a lot about the technical aspects of vulnerabilities and how to protect against them, but I think it's important to remember that there's a human element to cybersecurity as well. Behind every attack, there's a person making choices, and understanding their motivations can help us better defend ourselves.
That's a really insightful point. It's easy to get caught up in the technical details and forget that there are real people with real motivations behind these attacks.
So why do attackers do what they do? Is it all about money?
Money is certainly a major factor for many attackers, especially those involved in organized crime. They're looking to steal data they can sell on the black market, like credit card numbers, bank account credentials, or even personal information that can be used for identity theft.
It's a sad reality that cybercrime has become a lucrative business for some. But are there other motivations besides financial gain?
Absolutely. Some hackers are driven by the challenge, the thrill of finding and exploiting vulnerabilities. It's like solving a complex puzzle or beating a high score in a video game for them. They see it as a test of their skills and enjoy the sense of accomplishment that comes with successfully breaching a system.
So it's not always about stealing data or causing damage. Sometimes it's about the intellectual challenge of the bragging rights within the hacker community.
Exactly. And for some, it's about ideology or political activism. They might hack into systems to expose wrongdoing, to leak sensitive information, or to disrupt organizations they disagree with. They see themselves as digital Robin Hoods, fighting for a cause they believe in, even if their methods are illegal.
That's what's often called hacktivism, right? Using
Yeah.
hacking as a tool for social or political change.
Exactly. And then you have cases where hackers might be motivated by a combination of factors, making it even more difficult to predict their behavior.
It's a complex landscape, that's for sure. But how does understanding those motivations help us defend ourselves more effectively?
Well, if we know what drives attackers, we can tailor our defenses accordingly. For example, if we know that a particular group is motivated by financial gain, we can focus on securing our financial systems, implementing fraud detection mechanisms, and protecting sensitive data like credit card numbers.
So it's about understanding the adversary and anticipating their likely targets and tactics.
Precisely. It's like a game of chess. You need to try to think like your opponent to anticipate their moves and plan your strategy accordingly.
But how do we gain that understanding? Isn't trying to get inside the mind of a hacker a bit daunting?
It can be, but there are resources and experts who can help us decipher these motivations and tactics. Security researchers publish reports analyzing cybercrime trends and attacker behavior. There are organizations like MITE that maintain databases of known attack techniques and tactics that provide valuable insights.
So we don't have to do this alone. There's a whole community of experts working to understand these threats and develop strategies to counter them.
Exactly. We can leverage their knowledge and experience to improve our own security posture.
This has been an incredibly insightful discussion, and I feel like I'm starting to see the bigger picture of this Patch Tuesday and the overall cybersecurity landscape. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to come back to something we touched on earlier. The idea that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility.
That's a crucial point. We often think of cybersecurity as something that only large organizations or governments need to worry about. But the reality is that every individual who uses technology has a role to play in creating a safer digital world.
Absolutely. So what can ordinary people like me do to contribute to a safer digital environment?
Well, there are many simple but effective steps everyone can take. For example, using strong, unique passwords for each of your online accounts and enabling multi-factor authentication whenever possible are essential first steps.
Okay, strong passwords and multi-factor authentication, check. What else?
Keep your software up to date. As we've discussed extensively, patching is one of the most important things you can do to protect your devices and data from known vulnerabilities.
Patching, patching, patching. The mantra of this episode.
It's that important. Another crucial step is to be cautious about the information you share online and be wary of suspicious emails, links, and attachments. Phishing attacks are becoming increasingly sophisticated, so it's crucial to think before you click and be skeptical of anything that seems too good to be true.
So practice good digital hygiene, be careful about what you share and what you click on. Makes sense. Anything else?
Back up your important data regularly. This way, even if your devices are compromised or you experience a hardware failure, you won't lose your precious photos, documents, or other important files.
Backups, always a good idea. What else?
Use a reputable antivirus program and make sure it's always up to date. This will help protect you from malware and other malicious software that could compromise your devices.
Antivirus, check. Anything else?
Consider using a virtual private network or VPN when connecting to public Wi-Fi networks. VPNs encrypt your internet traffic, making it much more difficult for hackers to intercept your data.
So a VPN adds an extra layer of security, especially when I'm using public Wi-Fi at a coffee shop or airport.
Exactly. And finally, perhaps one of the most important things you can do is to continuously educate yourself about cybersecurity threats and best practices. The threat landscape is constantly evolving, so staying informed is crucial.
Okay, so educate yourself and stay informed. Got it.
By taking these simple steps, you can significantly reduce your risk of becoming a victim of cybercrime and contribute to a safer online experience for everyone.
This has been an incredibly informative session, but there's one more aspect of cybersecurity we haven't explored yet, the psychological element. Why do attackers choose to do what they do? What motivates them beyond just money? And how can we use that understanding to better defend ourselves?
Those are great questions, and we'll delve into those in the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
All right, so we've journeyed through this technical jungle that is Patch Tuesday, but now it's time to explore the human side of cybersecurity. What makes these attackers tick? What drives them to spend countless hours trying to break into systems?
It's a fascinating question. And just like any group of people, there's no single answer. Hackers are a diverse bunch, and their motivations can be incredibly complex.
So is it all about money, or are there other things going on?
While money is a big motivator for many, especially those who are involved in organized cybercrime rings, it's not the only factor. Some hackers are driven by a thirst for knowledge and the challenge of outsmarting security measures.
It's like a game for them, like a digital puzzle to solve.
Exactly. They see it as a test of their skills, a way to prove their technical prowess and gain recognition, within the hacker community. It's a bit like those escape rooms that are so popular these days, but obviously with much higher stakes.
I can see the appeal, even though I certainly wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of their skills. But are there other motivations besides money and the thrill of the challenge?
Absolutely. Some hackers are driven by ideology or a desire to expose injustice. They might target governments or corporations that they perceive as corrupt, leaking sensitive information to bring their actions to light.
Right, that's the whole hacktivist approach that we heard about, using hacking as a form of protest or whistleblowing.
Exactly. And then you have those who are motivated by a desire for chaos or disruption. They might launch denial of service attacks to take down websites or just disrupt online services just to prove they can.
It's a bit like digital vandalism, leaving their mark on the digital landscape, even if it's a destructive one. So we've got money, challenge, ideology, and chaos. It's quite a spectrum of motivations. But how does understanding all of this help us protect ourselves?
Well, by understanding what drives an attacker, we can then tailor our defenses more effectively. For example, if we know that a particular group is motivated by financial gain, we can prioritize securing financial data and implementing fraud detection systems. If a group is known for hacktivism, we can be extra vigilant about protecting sensitive information that could be used for propaganda or to damage our reputation.
So it's like knowing your enemy.
Yeah.
Anticipating their tactics and, fortifying the areas they're most likely to target.
Precisely. It's about being proactive and strategic in our approach to cybersecurity.
But how do we gain that kind of insight into hacker motivations? Just seems like a daunting task to try to get inside the minds of these individuals.
It can be, But thankfully, we don't have to do it alone. There's a whole community of security researchers and organizations that are dedicated to analyzing cybercrime trends and attacker behavior. They publish reports, they maintain databases of known attack techniques, and share valuable insights that can really help us understand the why behind the attacks.
So it's about tapping into the collective knowledge of the security community and using their expertise to kind of guide our own security strategies.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together and that by sharing information and best practices, we can collectively raise the bar against cyber threats.
This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening. We've gone from the nitty-gritty details of individual vulnerabilities to the broader trends that are shaping the cybersecurity landscape, and now we've even explored the psychology behind the attacks. It's clear that cybersecurity is far more complex than just installing antivirus software and hoping for the best.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Cybersecurity is an ongoing process. It's a journey of continuous learning and adaptation. It requires a holistic approach, a combination of technical measures, human awareness, and a willingness to stay informed and to evolve our strategies as the threats themselves evolve.
Well said. This episode has been packed with valuable insights and practical advice, but before we wrap up, any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
I'd just say that knowledge is power when it comes to cybersecurity. The more you understand about the threats and how to protect yourself, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the digital world safely. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Great advice. It's been a pleasure unpacking this Patch Tuesday with you.
Likewise, it's always rewarding to shed light on these important topics and empower individuals to take control of their own cybersecurity.
And remember, everyone, security is a journey, not a destination. Stay curious.